Let me tell you something powerful. The fear of not being enough. It's the silent killer of dreams. It whispers lies in your ear. It tells you you're too late, too broken, too ordinary. And for so many people, it becomes their reality. But here's the truth. That fear is not who you are. It's just a story you've rehearsed so many times that you've started believing it. You weren't born with the belief that you're not enough. You were born with limitless potential, with light, with fire in your spirit. But somewhere along the way, someone, something, or some experience made you question that. Maybe it was rejection, maybe it was comparison, maybe it was years of criticism, internal or external, and now you wear that fear like a second skin. But today, I want you to know something. With every cell in your body, you can shift it, you can rewire that fear, and it starts with one decision. The decision to stop identifying with the lie. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is a signal. It tells you where you care. It shows you where you're about to grow. When you feel that fear of not being enough rise up, that's your invitation, not to shrink, not to run, but to lean in and rise. It's your internal compass pointing you to where the breakthrough lies. You see, the problem isn't fear itself. The problem is what we attach to it. You fear you're not enough. Why? Because you've made your worth conditional. Conditional on success, conditional on approval, conditional on perfection. But what if your worth was never up for negotiation? What if it was never about being enough? Because you always were. Let that land. You don't need to add more to your life to feel worthy. You need to remove the layers that never belonged to you, the stories, the labels, the comparisons. You strip that away, and what's left? Truth. Power, certainty. If you want to shift your fear, change what you focus on. Most people focus on what they're not, what they haven't done, what others think, but focus is power. Shift your focus to your strength, to your progress, to your potential. You'll start seeing evidence that you are more than enough, and always were. But don't stop there. Step into action. Confidence doesn't come before action. It comes from action. Take the risk. Speak your truth. Chase that dream, and when the fear shows up again, and it will, you greet it with a smile and say, "Thanks for the reminder, I'm growing," because that's what this is really about, growth, expansion, becoming more of who you were born to be. And every time you choose courage over fear, every time you act despite that voice of doubt, you reclaim a piece of your power. You were never meant to live small. You were never meant to live doubting your worth. You were built for impact, for connection, for greatness. So stop waiting to feel enough. Before you start now, and prove to yourself that you always were. This isn't a theory, it's a decision, a choice to live aligned with your truth, and your truth is powerful beyond measure. Let the world feel that power, let you feel it. Now go out there and live like you're already enough. Because you are. The belief that you are not enough is not a fact. It's a script you've repeated in your mind so often, it's started to feel like truth, but it's not. It's a lie. A deeply rooted one, maybe, but still a lie. You weren't born thinking you were inadequate. Look at any child. They don't question if they're enough. They don't hesitate to express themselves, to play, to be seen. That pure confidence was natural. But somewhere along the way, something changed. You heard someone say you weren't smart enough, talented enough, attractive enough, or successful enough. Maybe you were compared to someone else. Maybe you failed at something once, or a few times, and instead of separating those moments from your identity, you absorbed them as part of who you are. That's where the fear begins. That moment when a belief takes root and becomes a lens through which you see everything. Suddenly, no achievement feels good enough, no compliment feels sincere. You start to chase external validation, hoping it will silence that inner critic, but no matter how much you do, it never feels like you've done enough. That's because the problem isn't what you're doing, the problem is what you're believing, and the most dangerous part, you start to identify with the fear. You don't just feel unworthy, you start to believe that you are unworthy. That's the trap. You confuse emotion with identity, but your emotions are temporary, and your identity is something you have the power to reclaim. Just because the voice in your head is loud doesn't mean it's right. Just because fear shows up doesn't mean it deserves the final word. The turning point comes when you stop trying to silence the fear with external proof, and start discrediting the fear with internal truth. Ask yourself, where did I learn this belief? Who taught me I wasn't enough? What moment convinced me that my worth was conditional? When you start to challenge the roots of that fear, you begin to dismantle its power. You realize that the fear of not being enough is just a conditioned pattern, and what's been conditioned can be broken. This isn't about pretending the fear doesn't exist. It's about recognizing that fear is just an echo of the past, not a prediction of the future. And when you stop identifying with the story, you start freeing yourself from it. You become the author again. You get to choose a different script, a new narrative, one that's grounded in truth, not limitation. You are not your fear, you are not your doubt, you are not your past. You are far more powerful than the story you've been telling yourself. And the moment you stop rehearsing the lie, you make space to live your truth. You've always been enough. It's time you finally believed it. What you focus on, you feel, and what you feel, you start to believe. Most people who struggle with the fear of not being enough are stuck in a pattern of focusing on everything they lack, what they're not, what they haven't done, what others have that they don't. It becomes a constant mental comparison trap. You scroll through social media, and without even realizing it, your mind starts measuring. They're more successful, they're more confident, they've achieved more than I have. That focus feeds the fear. And the more you feed it, the more it grows. But here's the truth. You have the power to change what you focus on. And when you change your focus, you change your life. Most people think they need to wait until they feel enough to shift their mindset, but it actually works in reverse. You shift your mindset first by consciously choosing what to focus on, and then your emotions begin to change. Focus is a muscle, and you need to train it every day. Left on autopilot, it will naturally drift toward fear, scarcity, and self-doubt. That's just how the brain is wired, to protect, to scan for danger, to survive. But you weren't born to survive, you were born to thrive. And thriving requires you to redirect your focus toward your strength, your growth, and your potential. Start with your progress. So many people ignore how far they've come because they're too focused on how far they still have to go. But if you take a moment to look back, really look, you'll see battles you've already fought, challenges you've already overcome, fears you've already faced and conquered. That's not small, that's evidence. Evidence that you're resilient, evidence that you're growing, evidence that you are, in fact, more than enough. Next, focus on your strengths. You have them, everyone does. But when you're stuck in the fear of inadequacy, you overlook them. You minimize them. You say things like, "That's not a big deal," or "anyone could do that." But not everyone can do what you do. Not everyone has your insight, your heart, your determination. Your strengths are unique to you. And when you start to appreciate them, really value them, you begin to stand taller and finally focus on your potential, not where you are now, but where you're going. The fear of not being enough thrives on the belief that you're stuck, that you can't grow. But that's a lie. You're not fixed. You're fluid. You're capable of growth, change, and evolution. When you focus on what's possible instead of what's missing, you light a fire inside of you. You stop trying to be someone else, and you start becoming the fullest version of you. Focus isn't just a mental shift, it's a life shift. Whatever you feed with your attention becomes your reality. So stop feeding the fear. Start feeding the truth. You are enough, and you always have been. You just need to focus long enough to see it. Confidence is not something you're born with, it's something you build. And the way you build it is by taking action, even when fear is screaming in your ear. Most people wait for confidence to show up before they move. They wait until they feel ready, until the doubt is gone, until they're sure it'll work. But that moment rarely comes. Why? Because confidence doesn't precede action, it follows it. You can't think your way into confidence, you have to act your way into it, and that means doing the very things that scare you, that make you feel exposed, uncertain, or vulnerable. Every time you take a step forward in the presence of fear, you prove something to yourself. You show yourself that you're stronger than the voice of doubt. You create a new reference point that says, "I can handle this," And slowly, step by step, that's how confidence is born, not overnight, but through repeated action and evidence. The fear of not being enough often paralyzes people. It convinces them to shrink, to avoid risk, to play small. But the truth is, action is the antidote to that fear. When you do the very thing you're afraid of, you rob fear of its power. You take the unknown and make it known. You replace questions with answers. You don't just sit around wondering if you're enough. You go out and become enough by moving, growing, and evolving. Even small steps matter. You don't need to leap off a cliff. You just need to move forward consistently. Speak up in the meeting, share your idea, set that boundary, pursue that goal you've been avoiding. Each time you take one of these steps, you reinforce a different belief. That you are capable, that you are growing, that you are becoming who you were meant to be. Confidence isn't about being perfect. It's about being courageous. It's about moving even when your knees are shaking and your voice is trembling. And yes, you will fail sometimes, you will fall, but that's part of the process. Confidence is not built by avoiding failure, it's built by learning how to rise from it. When you act and fail, you discover that failure didn't destroy you. You're still standing, you're still breathing, and now you're wiser, more experienced, more prepared. That's how real, grounded confidence is born, not from avoiding fear, but from dancing with it. So stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for the fear to disappear. That day may never come, but today you can make a decision to act anyway, to speak anyway, to step forward anyway. That's where your power lies. And that's where confidence begins, not in the absence of fear, but in the presence of action. You don't become enough by proving anything to the world. You become enough by proving it to yourself, one bold step at a time.